Latasha Harlins was 15 when she was shot and killed by a liquor store owner, a Korean immigrant who accused the teen of trying to steal a bottle of orange juice.
Every crime tells a story. And behind every story is a name, a face, and a life interrupted. South Central Los Angeles, a stretch of California that's often misunderstood and misrepresented. In the early 90s, it was a community of rhythm, resilience, and struggle, where tight-knit black and brown neighborhoods fought to survive under the weight of poverty, police violence, and racial tension. A place where children played on cracked sidewalks lined with liquor stores, pawn shops, and car washes. The sound of hip-hop, church choirs, and sirens were a constant reminder of both the culture and the chaos. South Central wasn't just a place on the map. It was a reflection of what it meant to be black or brown and striving in America, where generational dreams collided with systemic barriers, where tension between the LAPD and the community, along with simmering racial divide between black and Korean residents, was fueled by economic disparities and fed media-driven stereotypes. South Central Los Angeles became a place where many felt their lives were reduced to a statistic rather than valued as human. With me being a huge fan of Tupac, I've definitely heard the name Latasha Harlins in some of his songs, but I never knew her story. After recently coming across it, I was surprised I had never came across it sooner. However, looking back, I remember the media at the time was consumed with the horrific beating of Rodney King, so Latasha's story slipped into the background. And like so many others, I never knew about this heartbreaking story. So today, we'll shine light on the tragic story of Latasha Harlins. Born on January 1, 1976 in East St. Louis, Illinois, to Crystal Harlins and Sylvester Akoff Sr., Latasha Harlins was the oldest of 3 children. Described as a bright, driven young woman with a deep love for basketball and a quiet strength beyond her years. In 1981, her family relocated to Los Angeles, California. In 1985, at the age of 9, Latasha and her siblings would endure an unimaginable loss. Their mother, Crystal, was unalived by gun violence. Not long after, their father became absent, offering no financial support, leaving Latasha and her siblings to cope with the devastating loss of both parents. Raised by her grandmother, Ruth Harlins, in a crowded home in South Central Los Angeles, alongside her younger siblings, Vester and Christina, and their cousin, Shanice. Latasha was forced to grow up fast, finding strength in the love of her family and the support of her community. Even while facing personal tragedies, Latasha would still remain hopeful and resilient. In middle school, she ran track and consistently made honor roll. By the time she entered Westchester High School as a freshman, she dreamed of becoming a lawyer and taking care of her grandmother. To those who knew her, she was the neighborhood's big sister, a protector, a motivator, and a young woman who always looked out for others. Just 13 days after the world watched Rodney King be brutally beaten by the LAPD officers, another tragic act of violence unfolded in South Central Los Angeles.
Video of the 1991 beating of Rodney King by LAPD officers is infamous. But 2 weeks after this, there was a case that would also shake South Central LA to its core.
On the morning of March 16, 1991, 15-year-old Latasha Harlins was dropped off at Empire Liquor Market near West 91st and South Figueroa Street, just minutes away from her home. Being that the store had a long-standing reputation in the black community for racial profiling customers, Latasha's grandmother had warned her not to go there. But only needing a single item and with no closer option, Latasha thought she'd run in, grab a bottle of orange juice, and head home. At around 10 o'clock a.m., Latasha entered the store. Already in the store at the time was Songs Do, the Korean store owner, who stood behind the counter, and two other customers. Latasha walked to the back cooler, picked up a $1.79 bottle of orange juice, placed it in her backpack, leaving the backpack open with the orange juice still visible, and then took out $2 out of her pocket. Carrying both the backpack and the money in her hand, she approached the counter. Before she could say a word, Songs Do immediately accused her of stealing. Within seconds, Songs escalated it into a physical confrontation. Songs reached over the counter, grabbing Latasha's sweater and backpack. Latasha swung the backpack to break free, missing Songs, who then pulled the backpack away from Latasha and tossed it behind the counter. Songs continued holding and yanking onto Latasha's sweater. In self-defense, Latasha punched Songs twice in the face. Songs fell, quickly got back up, and threw a stool at Latasha, in which Latasha dodged. During the brief struggle, the bottle of juice fell out the backpack and was on the floor in front of the counter. Latasha picked up the bottle of juice and tried to put it on the counter. Instead of de-escalating, Songs knocked the bottle from Latasha's hand and swatted it off the counter, knocking the bottle to the floor behind the counter. Latasha then turned and began walking towards the door to leave. That's when Songs reached under the counter, grabbed a .38 caliber handgun from his holster, and fired. The bullet struck Latasha in the back of the head, unaliving her instantly. What you're about to see is the original surveillance footage from the store. There is no sound. Police have only released a portion of surveillance footage from that day. And due to YouTube guidelines, the part where Latasha was unalive was removed. Outside, Songs' husband, Billy Do, was on break, asleep in their van. Awakened by the gunshot, he rushed inside and found Latasha lying lifeless on the floor. Songs, claiming she fainted, collapsed in his arms. He would then call 911. When police arrived, Songs alleged that Latasha had attempted to steal and had threatened to take her life. She claimed she asked Latasha if she planned to pay, but two eyewitnesses, the customers inside the store, told a different story. They testified that Songs never asked Latasha any questions and never gave her a chance to pay. Instead, they said Songs immediately became hostile, calling Latasha a derogatory name and initiating the physical altercation. Neither heard Latasha make any threats.
Back in 1991, the 15-year-old lost her life in a liquor store over a bottle of orange juice. The clerk said she thought Harlins put it in her backpack to steal. The two struggled, and as Latasha walked away, she shot and killed her. Investigators later said Latasha died with the dollars to buy it clutched in her hand.
And the entire incident was captured on the store surveillance camera. After the initial investigation at the Empire Liquor Market, Songs was arrested on suspicion of unaliving. She was held without bail at the Sybil Brand Institute for Women for 10 days, before making her first appearance on March 19, 1991, in the Compton Municipal Court. There she was formally charged with first-degree unaliving and pled not guilty. She was released on a $250,000 bail. Due to the publicity and public outrage, the trial was moved out of Compton and relocated to Los Angeles County for security and fairness concerns. On September 30, 1991, the trial of the People versus Sonja Du began. Sonja's attorney claimed self-defense. They argued that after being struck by Latasha during the confrontation, Sonja feared for her life. They claimed she believed Latasha was going to unalive her and that she fired the gun accidentally in a moment of panic. At one point, Sonja even implied that she suspected Latasha might have been in a gang, an unfounded assumption that played into dangerous stereotypes and racial biases. Throughout the proceeding, Sonja displayed a chilling lack of remorse and accountability. The prosecution would tell a different story. The two eyewitnesses, who were children themselves, gave an unwavering, detailed account that directly contradicted Sonja's claim, and the store surveillance footage confirmed what the witnesses described. Prosecutors argued that this was no accident. It was an intentional, unjustified unaliving, rooted not in fear, but in prejudice and rage. However, despite the eyewitnesses and the footage, the court ultimately dismissed the first-degree unaliving charge, agreeing with the defense that the shooting occurred during a sudden quarrel or in the heat of passion. The charge was reduced to voluntary manslaughter, a crime that carried a maximum sentence of 16 years in prison. After 3 days of deliberation, on October 11, 1991, the jury returned a verdict. Sonja Du was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter. They firmly rejected the defense's argument that the shooting was accidental or in self-defense. In their eyes, this was an unjustified, intentional unaliving. The jury recommended the maximum sentence of 16 years in prison. The sentencing was scheduled for November 15, 1991. When the day arrived, a decision was made that would send a shockwave throughout the community. Judge Joyce Carlin, a former federal prosecutor, chose to reject the jury's recommendation. Instead, she handed down a sentence that many felt was an insult. Sonja Du received 5 years of probation, 400 hours of community service, a $500 fine, and was ordered to pay for Latasha's funeral and medical expenses. But there would be no prison time whatsoever. Judge Carlin defended her decision by claiming that Sonja had acted under duress due to previous robberies at the store. She described the shooting as taking place in the heat of battle, a phrase that many found deeply offensive because Latasha had been walking away when she was shot in the back of the head. Judge Carlin went on to say, Sonja Du was not a callous woman who shot someone on the street for no reason, but a woman that was severely beaten and responded to the beating. Judge Carlin would then call the situation tragic, but said that Sonja Du didn't pose a threat to society. Many felt Judge Carlin's language painted Sonja Du not as the criminal she was, but as a victim, a position Judge Carlin reinforced by claiming her ruling was based on victims' rights. Judge Carlin would insist that race played no part in her decision, but for many, her actions and words told a different story. Activists, civil rights groups, and everyday citizens pointed out the glaring hypocrisy. Just months earlier, Judge Carlin had sentenced a man to 30 days in jail for kicking a dog. So her actions were very clear, and the public outrage was immediate. Black political leaders, community organizers, and civil rights activists condemned the ruling as an egregious failure of justice. Protesters would march at the courthouse, and rallies spread throughout Los Angeles and beyond. The pain and anger crossed racial lines. Even within some of the Korean communities, many were appalled that a woman who had unalived a child was allowed to walk free. Under tense pressure, the California state legal system appealed Judge Carlin's decision. On April 29, 1992, despite evidence showing that every person convicted of similar charges in Los Angeles County had received some amount of jail time, the California Court of Appeals chose to uphold Judge Carlin's ruling. Then, just 8 days later, on April 29, 1992, another verdict would again shake the community. The 4 LAPD officers caught on camera brutally beating Rodney King in a tape that was seen around the world were acquitted. The community was forced to endure yet another gut-wrenching miscarriage of justice. Black lives being devalued by the legal system, and the list of black victims continuing to grow. For many, this was the final insult. Film director John Singleton, who was at the courthouse the day the Rodney King verdict was read, would quote, "By having this verdict, what these people did, they lit the fuse to a bomb." And indeed, just hours after the decision, a fuse that had been smoldering for years erupted into flames.
Dew was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, but given probation. Then came April 29, 1992, the not guilty verdicts in the beating of Rodney King. 4 LAPD officers acquitted. Rioters took to the streets, and after years of cultural tensions, half the businesses burned or looted. 2,000 of them were Korean-owned.
What followed would become known as the 1992 Los Angeles Uprising. The riots swept across the city from April 29th to May 3rd. Empire Liquor Market was looted and burned to the ground. It never reopened. On October 29, 1991, months after the unaliving of Latasha and months before the verdicts, rapper Ice Cube released the controversial track, Black Korea, a song that was raw and unfiltered. The song voiced the frustration felt by many in the black community towards discriminatory treatment in the Korean-owned stores. Though some praised the song as a bold critique of systemic tension, others accused him of inciting division and racial violence, suggesting the song may have played some part in the LA riots. In the following year, on October 28, 1993, the great Tupac released Keep Your Head Up, a heartfelt dedication to Latasha Harlins that mourned her loss and uplifted black women. He would go on to immortalize her name in numerous songs, like Thug's Mansion, Hellraisers, I Wonder If Heaven Got a Ghetto, and White Man's World, to name a few. Latasha's name echoed across his body of work. In the wake of public pressure, the Los Angeles County District Attorney Office issued a blanket affidavits policy in 1992, barring Judge Carlin from presiding over any felony cases involving violent crimes. The Latasha Harlins Foundation was founded and operated by her sister Dr. Christina Rogers, her brother Vesta Akoff, and other family members, created to keep her story alive. In 2019, a documentary was released called A Song for Latasha, which honored her life. And on March 16, 2021, on the 30th anniversary of her life being tragically taken, the playground where she once played was renamed in her honor. It's been 70 years since the unaliving of Emmett Till, 34 years since the unaliving of Latasha Harlins, 5 years since the unaliving of Breonna Taylor. 3 different names, 3 different times, and yet the same disturbing pattern. A justice system that consistently failed to protect and value black lives. This was not just a senseless crime. It was a devastating reflection of racial profiling and the casual criminalization that black and brown communities endure every day. And still today, the nation struggles under the weight of its past and the reality of its present. It's a reminder that these cycles of pain and protest will not end until justice is measured by the nature of the crime and not the color of the skin. No story is forgotten. No voice should go unheard. Sending my deepest condolences and prayers to the family and friends of Latasha Harlins. Until the next time, thank you for watching Shades of Crime. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember to pray. God's listening.